September 12, 1997. Jay Leno was 22 minutes into The Tonight Show when a white envelope appeared on his desk that wasn't supposed to be there. Inside was a letter written in the shaky handwriting of a dying child, words so heartbreaking that they would stop America's most watched late-night show cold and create a moment of television so powerful that 18 million people would be crying at the same time. It was a typical Friday night at NBC's Studio 3 in Burbank. Jay sat behind his iconic desk, looking sharp in his perfectly tailored dark navy suit, crisp white shirt, and burgundy tie with subtle paisley patterns. His signature grey hair was styled to perfection, and a small American flag pin gleamed on his left lapel. The Tonight Show was in full swing. Jay was delivering his monologue about President Clinton's latest press conference, and the studio audience was eating it up, laughter rolling through the room in waves. Kevin Eubanks and the Tonight Show band were in their usual spot, ready with musical stings. Drew Barrymore was backstage, waiting for her interview segment. Everything was going exactly as planned. But then, 22 minutes into the broadcast, something happened that had never occurred in all of Jay's 6 years hosting the show. Debbie Vickers, the show's longtime stage manager, a woman who had worked with Jay since his very first episode and who prided herself on never, ever interrupting a live broadcast, walked directly onto the stage while the cameras were rolling. In her trembling hands was a crumpled white envelope with "Urgent for Jay Leno" written across it in blue crayon. The handwriting was that of a child, unsteady, innocent, desperate. Jay stopped mid-sentence. The studio audience fell into confused silence. Kevin Eubanks lowered his guitar, his smile fading into concern. Something was about to happen that would change everything. If this story is already pulling at your heart, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from right now. And trust me, you need to see what happens next. The Tonight Show with Jay Leno was running like a well-oiled machine that September evening. It was 1997, and Jay was at the height of his powers, beating David Letterman in the ratings, dominating late-night television, and becoming a household name across America. Studio 3 at NBC Burbank was packed with 300 enthusiastic audience members who had waited months for tickets. The energy was electric. Jay had just finished a bit about airline food when Debbie walked onto the stage. She had been part of the Tonight Show family for over a decade, working first with Johnny Carson and now with Jay. In all those years, through hundreds of episodes, she had never once stepped into camera frame during a live broadcast. Never. But here she was, walking purposefully toward Jay's desk, her face pale, her hands gripping that envelope like it contained something sacred. "Jay," she said quietly, but her voice carried through the studio microphone. "This just came through the front gate. Security brought it to me. They said you need to see it immediately." Jay took the envelope from her hands. The audience watched in absolute silence as he examined it. The envelope was wrinkled, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. There were small water stains on the paper, tears perhaps. The address was written in a child's handwriting, with some letters traced over by an adult hand to make them legible. But it was the return address that made Jay's expression change completely. Michael Patterson, age 8, Children's Hospital, Los Angeles. Jay looked up at the audience, then back at the envelope. His famous chin, the chin that had been the subject of 1,000 jokes, was trembling slightly. The man who could handle any situation with perfect comedic timing suddenly looked vulnerable, human, uncertain. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jay said, his voice stripped of its usual playful energy. "I apologize for the interruption. Something just arrived that I think... I need to read this right now. Is that okay with you?" The audience murmured their agreement, sensing they were about to witness something rare and real. Jay carefully opened the envelope with shaking fingers. Jay pulled out 2 pieces of lined notebook paper, the kind elementary school kids use when they're first learning to write. The handwriting was uneven, letters different sizes, some words clearly helped by an adult, but the voice was unmistakably a child's. Jay read silently at first, his eyes scanning slowly. The Tonight Show audience watched as America's king of late-night comedy fought to maintain his composure. His jaw clenched. He swallowed. His eyes began to fill. Kevin Eubanks stood from his bandleader chair, sensing something profound was happening. "I need to share this with you," Jay finally said, his voice already thick. "This is from a little boy named Michael Patterson. He wrote this from Children's Hospital." Jay took a breath and began reading aloud. "Dear Mr. Leno, my name is Michael, and I'm 8 years old. I have brain cancer, and the doctors told my mum and dad I only have about 4 weeks left, maybe less. I watch The Tonight Show every single night with my parents, even though it's way past my bedtime, because watching you makes us forget about the hospital and the treatments and all the scary stuff for a little while." Jay paused. The room was dead silent. "I love when you do headlines. My favorite guest was Robin Williams because he made me laugh so hard I forgot I was sick. When you and Robin did that bit about the talking parrot, I laughed until my stomach hurt. The good kind, not the cancer kind." Several in the audience were already crying. "I wanted to write because you make millions of people happy every night, and I wanted to say thank you before I have to go to heaven. I'm really scared, Mr. Leno. I've never been to heaven before, and even though my mom says it's beautiful, I'm afraid to leave my mom and dad and my little sister Emma." Jay's hands shook as he wiped his eyes. "I have one wish before I go. I want to tell a joke on your show. I want people to remember that Michael Patterson made them smile once. I know you're busy, so I understand if you can't, but my dad says you miss 100% of the shots you don't take." By the time Jay reached the closing, "Your friend Michael. P.S. I'm really good at knock-knock jokes." There wasn't a dry eye in Studio 3. Jay folded the letter carefully and looked into the camera. "If you're still with me, this story is about to get even more powerful. Stay until the end." Jay stared into the camera for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but carried the weight of conviction. "Michael, if you're watching right now, with your mom and dad and Emma, I need you to hear this. You don't have to wait to make people laugh. You already have. And you're going to be on this show. Right now." He turned to Debbie Vickers. "Get Children's Hospital Los Angeles on the phone immediately. I want to talk to Michael Patterson before this broadcast ends." The audience erupted. Not Tonight Show applause, but something deeper, a release of heartbreak and hope. Debbie sprinted off. Behind the scenes, The Tonight Show went into emergency mode. A commercial break was thrown without warning. Phone lines were being connected, switchboards navigated, and NBC Legal scrambled about broadcasting a minor. But Jay didn't care about protocol. He sat at his desk with the letter in his hands, waiting. 4 minutes later, unheard of for live late night, the show returned. The studio felt different now, sacred, anticipatory. 300 people sat in total silence. Jay was holding a telephone. The camera pushed in, revealing not the comedian, but the human being beneath. "Michael," Jay said gently, "can you hear me? This is Jay Leno." A small, weak voice came through the speakers. "Is this really Mr. Leno? From TV?" "It's really me, buddy," Jay said, his voice cracking. "I just read your letter to 18 million people, and I have a question for you. Are you ready to tell America your best knock-knock joke right now?" A pause, Then excitement broke through. "Right now? On The Tonight Show?" "Right now," Jay confirmed. 18 million people are waiting to hear Michael Patterson's joke. Are you ready?" Another pause. Then, with astonishing courage, "Okay, I'm ready." "All right, buddy. Go ahead." "Knock, knock." "Who's there?" Jay asked, joy and heartbreak mixing in his expression. "Interrupting cow." "Interrupting cow?" "Moo!" Michael shouted, nailing the timing. Then came laughter, pure, genuine, victorious. Not the laugh of a dying child, but the laugh of a performer who knew he'd landed it. Jay erupted, not his polite celebrity interview chuckle, real, deep, soul laughter. And Studio 3 laughed with him, and America laughed with him, not out of sympathy, but because the joke was perfect. "Michael," Jay managed through tears, "you just made 18 million people laugh. How does that feel?" "It feels really good," Michael said. "Thank you, Mr. Leno." "No, buddy. Thank you. Now listen to this." Jay signaled to the audience. 300 people rose to their feet in a standing ovation. "Michael, do you hear that? That's for you." "I hear it," Michael whispered, crying happy tears. Jay leaned forward. "I'm making you a promise. I'm starting a fund in your name so kids in hospitals get to laugh every day because of you." "That would be so cool," Michael said. "Other kids like me could laugh." "Every single day," Jay said. "This was the best day of my life," Michael whispered. "Goodbye, Mr. Leno." "Goodbye, Michael. You're a hero." The line went quiet. Jay sat holding the phone, unmoving, as the studio remained standing, silent, reverent, forever changed. Finally, Jay set the phone down and looked at the audience, then at the cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice raw, "I came here tonight to tell jokes about President Clinton and airline food, to interview Drew Barrymore, to do what we do every night, make you laugh, help you forget your troubles for an hour." He paused, steadying himself. "But sometimes life stops you in your tracks and reminds you what really matters. That little boy has 4 weeks to live, maybe less. And instead of being angry at God or the universe or the unfairness of it all, he used his time, his precious, limited time, to bring joy to other people, to make us laugh." Jay pulled out his handkerchief, the same one he used during warm-ups, and wiped his eyes, not caring that millions were watching him fall apart. "I've been doing this show for 6 years. Before that, I did stand-up for 20. I've interviewed presidents and movie stars and some of the funniest, most talented people on earth. But I don't think I've ever met anyone braver or more generous than Michael Patterson." The response was immediate. Before The Tonight Show's credits finished rolling, NBC's phone lines in Burbank were inundated. Over 15,000 calls within minutes, circuits failing under the volume. People weren't calling to request tickets. They were calling to ask, "How can we help Michael?" Within 24 hours, donations to Children's Hospital Los Angeles surpassed $75,000. Within a week, the total exceeded $400,000. Letters and packages arrived by the truckload, over 10,000 pieces of mail in the first week alone, all addressed to Michael Patterson. The hospital had to assign additional staff just to handle the outpouring. People sent toys, games, books, comic books, video games, stuffed animals, handmade gifts, anything that might brighten the life of a boy they'd never met. But more than the items, they sent love. Thousands of letters told Michael he was brave, that his joke had made them laugh when they needed it most, that his courage had inspired them to face their own battles. Parents of sick children wrote to say Michael had given their families hope. Terminal patients wrote to say he had shown them how to face the end with grace and humor. The Los Angeles Times ran a front-page story. 8-year-old comedian stops Tonight Show and starts a movement. Good Morning America devoted a full segment. Even President Clinton released a statement calling Michael a reminder that courage has no age limit. David Letterman, Jay's late-night rival, opened with a rare sincerity. What Jay Leno did on Friday reminded us why we do this job. That wasn't comedy, that was humanity. Michael Patterson lived for 5 weeks after his appearance on The Tonight Show, 1 week longer than doctors predicted. And those 5 weeks were filled with more love and joy than some people experience in a lifetime. Celebrities came to visit. Robin Williams spent an afternoon doing impressions until Michael's stomach hurt from laughing. Tom Hanks brought a signed basketball. Drew Barrymore visited multiple times, bringing books and just sitting with Michael and his family. But the person who visited most often was Jay Leno. Jay came to Children's Hospital 4 times during those 5 weeks, always quietly, without cameras or publicity. He brought jokes, stories, Tonight Show memorabilia, and something more valuable, his time. On his final visit, Michael gave Jay a drawing he'd made. It showed the two of them standing on the Tonight Show stage with the words, "Thank you for making my dream come true," written at the bottom in shaky handwriting. Jay kept that drawing in his NBC office for the rest of his tenure, then moved it to his personal garage at home, where it remained visible every day for the rest of his life. Michael Patterson passed away on October 19, 1997, 5 weeks after making 18 million people laugh. His funeral was attended by over 500 people, including Jay Leno, who sat with Michael's family in the front row and delivered a short eulogy. "Michael taught me that courage isn't about being unafraid," Jay said through tears. "It's about being terrified and doing the brave thing anyway." True to his word, Jay established the Michael Patterson Fund with a personal donation of $100,000. Its mission? Bring entertainment and joy to hospitalized children. In its first year, it helped 5,000 patients. Over the next 2 decades, it assisted more than 3 million. In 2010, when Jay retired, he donated Michael's drawing and letter to the Smithsonian's Broadcasting Collection. Curators noted that more visitors stopped to read Michael's letter than almost any other artifact, parents using it to show their children that even the smallest voices can change the world. Michael Patterson's appearance on The Tonight Show became a watershed moment in how America approached pediatric care. The concept of providing entertainment and emotional support to hospitalized children, which seems obvious today, was still developing in 1997. Within 6 months of Michael's story, children's hospitals across all 50 states began implementing programs inspired by his courage, ensuring young patients had access to joy during treatment. Child life specialists, professionals who help children cope with healthcare experiences, credit Michael's Tonight Show moment as the turning point that made their field a priority in pediatric medicine. In a 2004 interview, 7 years after that September night, Jay Leno was asked about his most memorable moment from over a decade hosting The Tonight Show. Without hesitation, he answered, "Michael Patterson. I interviewed 3 presidents, over 100 Oscar winners, and some of the funniest people who ever lived," Jay said. "But an 8-year-old kid with 4 weeks to live taught me more about courage and grace than all of them combined." Michael was dying, and instead of asking, "Why me?" he wanted to make people laugh. That's the definition of grace. When asked if he had any regrets, Jay shook his head. "Only that I didn't get to know him longer, but I'm grateful. Grateful I got to be part of his story, even for those few minutes." Today, Michael's knock-knock joke has been repeated millions of times, always with his story attached, ensuring that he lives on not as a sick child, but as a comedian who understood that laughter is one of the greatest gifts we can give each other. Jay Leno stopped The Tonight Show that night, not because something went wrong, but because something incredibly right was happening. Michael needed to be heard, and Jay made sure 18 million people and history was listening. If this story of courage and compassion moved you, subscribe right now for more true stories about the moments when television reminded us of our shared humanity. Share this video with someone who needs to know that even the smallest voices can create the biggest impact. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from, and what does Michael's courage mean to you? Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply ask for what we need, because you never know who might be listening. Michael Patterson asked, and he changed the world.